The Venus Project Team Speak Seminar, September 11th, 2011.
Should we make it harder to get abortions?
No, easier.
Is it racist to evict the Dale Farm Travelers? I looked up the Dale Farm Travelers, and this is, if I have it right, I did this a while ago. These people are kind of squatters, like gypsies. I guess they're kind of poor people, and there are problems overall with that. So this is kind of obscene to me, even considering this question in regards to the Venus Project. It's like saying, should all people have access to housing? The Venus Project is really beyond this. We feel that all people should have access to everything, and we're working on designs to show what this would look like in order to have housing for everyone worldwide.
We agree there, because I think that we would take some of the few educated gypsies and inform them so that they can reach other gypsies. It's best to have gypsies present the Venus Project to other gypsies.
Yeah, so there wouldn't even be a question of evicting anybody or whether it was racist. Everybody, we feel, should have access to housing. Should we send fewer people to prisons within this group?
There would be no one sent to prison. They'd be helped. And besides, it's only during the transition that you'd have that problem. Once children are educated and they have access to the necessities of life, they have no reason to steal.
And I just want to mention that the Venus Project isn't grappling with these types of questions. It's this system that we live under that is, because we have an established system with untenable conditions of deprivation and laws to enable those in positions of advantage to hold on to what they have. They then superimpose a set of ethics and to keep conditions as they are for those in control. So the Venus Project asks, what makes people behave the way they do? Why do people steal, cheat, become corrupt, or even sent to facilities that they call prisons? And by the way, prisons are the worst type of environment to send anyone, especially those who are having problems. So the Venus Project wants to eliminate the need for any prisons at all. The most criminal people, we think, are those perpetuating the ideas, these abusive ideas like judges and lawyers and police. They don't look around and ask, what are the conditions in this society that make people behave the way they do?
That also goes for the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Those people have no information as to what generates behavior. They would never send people to prison. It's the worst and cruelest thing you would do.
Yeah.
It would help them.
Right. Instead, society gives people a value system of things like free will and puts the blame on the individual. So the Venus Project wants to change society in such a way that people do not act that way, the ways that they call criminal. They have access to all their needs. So these questions are kind of related to today's society.
That goes for the idea of free will. Free will is a myth. Actually, we all are brought up in an environment with motion pictures, news, magazines that all perpetuate the same, or 90% of them perpetuate the same point of view, which produces the same results. Negative.
Next question. In an experimental city that has been built in a country where the market system still exists, how do people living in the city relate to the rest of the country? Is this city isolated from the rest of the country in order to keep the experimental conditions from being distorted by the interaction with the rest of the country?
We don't have that sort of thing. Only during the transition will there be aberrant behavior. Once the Venus Project is installed, then there's no need to monitor people. That would be considered socially offensive. So we treat all people well, and those that lack information, we provide that information on television, radio, and all other means of communication.
The first city, as we envision, unless there are other conditions, we can never tell what conditions will come up. with the first city. But the first city will be a transitional city between systems, more so.
In which people are schooled or given information in the working characteristics of the Venus Project. Without that information, they will not understand it.
It wouldn't be isolated. It would be quite the contrary. We'd like to have what we call the theme park of the future, showing what a resource-based economy in the future would be like. And people would come from all over the world to see how the city worked, and then hopefully build one in their country. And it would be a showplace where people would be coming through all the time.
That's why we use motion pictures to help different people understand. The visual methods are much better than verbal, but we will use a cross between verbal and visual presentations to help people understand. And if some people still have difficulty grasping it, it's up to us to figure out how and what we will use in motion pictures to help them understand.
You've already mentioned this a little bit. The next question, he says, I see free will and self-serving desire as being a major hurdle for the project. And then he's asking, or she is asking, perhaps moral development, education may need to be imposed upon the masses to stimulate and increase the thoughtfulness, participation, awareness, intelligence of the population at large to increase the success of this new world order.
We don't use moral values. Instead, we use a physical referent, meaning showing them how reservoirs can supply the need rather than wells, showing how harnessing the forces of nature to work to serve the advantage of the new society. In other words, we don't use moral principles. We show operational principles to show them how we can affect the supply of water, how we can produce more food, how we can improve agriculture. We don't use moral values. We use methods of showing how to produce in abundance and how to relate to one another.
I think religion has been trying to superimpose religious values of right and wrong and good and bad and don't steal. And unless you have the society that is brought up physically to that, unless you have methods in society that enable people to act that way, you're working backwards. If you have scarcity and not enough food to go around, if you superimpose a moral value of do not steal, it's not going to work when there's so much deprivation.
Most political systems are based upon personal opinions rather than careful studies. And that's why they don't work, because they're not related to the real world. Most politicians cannot serve. They don't have the necessary information to serve. Don't take my word for that. Just ask them questions. How can you prevent war? How can you grow more food? This is what's needed, the methodology of overcoming scarcity.
Next question. I get frustrated trying to learn science even though I love it. What am I doing wrong?
Well, there's no right or wrong. All I can tell you to do is study that area of science that you seem to grasp. Stay away from areas that seem too foreign to you, and become proficient in the area that you can understand, and then reveal that information to other people as best you can. But I would suggest that you read the book, The Best That Money Can't Buy. Read the book several times so you get a good, comprehensive picture of the workings of the Venus Project. In that way, you can have less difficulty in describing the value of the Venus Project to each individual.
That is a science study, the study of science applied to the social system. The next question, do you consider a waste of time that activists spend time in studying science like biology or chemistry or other way? Let's see, just the language is a little awkward. Do you advocate team activism over trying to raise money by inventions?
I encourage education mostly, And I would say again, if you don't read the book, The Best That Money Can't Buy, you don't have the means to communicate. Read that book several times before you even venture into attacking existing and established values.
Do you think it's a good idea to spend time studying science, biology, or chemistry?
Nothing in the sciences really would be a waste of time. But if you spend more time on the origin and history of civilization, you'll have more tools to work with those that do not understand these things.
And in terms of raising money, do you think it's worthwhile to raise money through designing inventions?
No. It's better that this is what gets us into trouble. The fact that we're not provided with the means for solving problems. There are many problems in society. What we really need is problem solvers. Military systems. That would be at variance with the system we recommend, presenting information and knowledge to people that do not have that information.
Can the human brain process information rapidly today? Can people improve their learning ability?
The human brain can't process anything unless it's exposed to the workings of different systems. You forget that in order to make a doctor, you have to send him to a medical environment. To make an airline pilot, you send him to an aviation environment, so he gets aviation training. What you have to do is provide the necessary environment for people that do not have answers to questions.
To start a resource-based economy, it's been said to require a survey of the stated resources. Okay, let me go right down to the question here. Are there any intentions of creating a website devoted to developing what he thinks is the number one resource that is readily available, the human mind, and we would agree, in the form of free education for everyone with a computer or internet?
It isn't the human mind. It's what they're educated to understand. The human mind without information cannot do anything unless you provide them with information. Information means how to do things. Hands-on learning, planting vegetation and nurturing it, and knowing how, and understanding the principles of agriculture, agronomy, plant life, what it takes to grow plants. The human mind cannot evolve any way whatsoever unless exposed to the methodology or the latest methodology for growing plants, if that's what you want to know. The latest methods of building, putting up buildings. In other words, if you don't have that information, the brain cannot bring it forth. The brain is only a storage system. And a storage system, the more information you expose to, the broader the frames of reference. In other words, a creative person is exposed to many different value systems, and it is that exposure that enables you to think out solutions to problems. The brain as such, without exposure to information, cannot evolve unless exposed to information or methods of doing things.
And this person is concerned with that as well, stating that what he's found is people don't understand the resource-based, kind of isolated from their friends or family because they can't relate it. So he's asking if we are going to develop perhaps an internet site, possibly to create by the Venus Project supporters, well, an internet site for free education for everyone that can be obtained on the computer. But I would suggest that he look at our new website and check out all the information that we have there and the information that we're going to be having. We're going to be having a Venus Project University that we're working on now. I think we must have over 50 pages of that. It's going to be on all topics throughout the social sequence, and it's going to also have video and audio on each topic a little bit. We also have the community college, where if you're interested in participating in something that we're working on, you can get the tools to do that And you can put up tutorials or your own work, your own tutorials you can put up there as well on the different topics that we're going to be using to further the Venus Project aims and projects. So now that you're here too, Andrew, we all, I think I can speak for all of us, really want to thank you and the rest of the group that helped you do this new website. It's just really awesome. There's so much on it and so much to learn on it. And the things we're going to be adding to it are up there as well. It's just expanded so much, and we appreciate all your hard work. I know you had sleepless nights doing this too, and lots of aggravation because you weren't aware of how to do this. It wasn't your trade, so you had to learn it in order to do it. But we really, really appreciate it.
I just want to say this. I don't like to repeat myself, but the nature of the questions you ask make it necessary for me to repeat myself. Before you offer any suggestions to the operation of the Venus Project, you read the book called The Best That Money Can't Buy. Read it twice before you offer any suggestions, because we may have covered that a long time ago.
So,
Of course, Andrew. There's no way I can thank you. I deeply appreciate everything you've done and everything that UNITA has done to help this project. And of course, all the people working toward this end. Yes.
yes, and the rest of the group that was working on the site as well. I know they put a lot of effort into it.
You just said thanks to me and Julia and everyone else that's working on this. You guys have been on this together for the last 35 years. Jacque's been at this for 75 years. That's almost 3 times my lifespan. I don't think anyone can possibly thank you guys enough for all the work that you've put in. And to be honest with you, you know, the amount of flack that you guys have had over the years, considering the amount of work that you've put in selflessly towards this, I don't think there's anything that any of us can do that will match that. And, you know, it's an honour for us personally, you know, me and Julia, and I'm sure it is for everyone else, to work our asses off as well to get this direction implemented.
We really appreciate that. We had no other choice, but just the amount of help is overwhelming to us because we had been working on it alone, so to get help is fantastic. You had mentioned earlier, Jacque, that you wanted to speak in general about free will, if you wanted to expand on that.
Yes. By free will, I mean you make a decision based upon your own intuition. There's no such thing. If you ask an Eskimo what he would like, he can't state a stainless steel building. It doesn't exist within his environment. Those ideas do not exist. Therefore, a person, a human being, can only reflect their culture. Even Leonardo da Vinci talked to people that talked about gears, levers, all kinds of natural phenomena. His friends were different than the normal person. That's why he came up with different ideas. This also goes for Jules Verne. Jules Verne always talked to scientists about how they conceive the future. And he used most of the ideas of scientists in his writing about the future. No one can predict the future without studying the present and knowing something about technology. And that is not intuitive. You cannot bring out in a human being that which is not there. In other words, you can't ask a butcher to describe the latest medical techniques. He doesn't concern himself with those problems. You cannot ask a fashion designer to give you the latest information on aircraft structures. They know nothing about it, therefore they can only talk about fashion or the fields that they have been exposed to. I don't know how many times to repeat that, but a human being cannot in any way exceed the environment they're exposed to. Free will is an assumption. Remember that all your choices are within the category of the society you're raised in. No one takes courses in how to shoe horses today because there's hardly any jobs provided by that. So your culture recommends what you study. Law, business, investment banking, whatever your culture has to offer is what you study. And the things that you pick are based upon that which is available in your culture. If you're a gypsy, you're trained on how to maintain the wagon and how to talk to people about their future. Whatever gypsies teach other gypsies is the frame of reference that they operate from. There is no such thing as free will. There's no such thing as freedom of choice. Don't take my word for it, but ask a Seminole Indian sometimes, if you ever get a chance to, what kind of house would you like to dwell in? They usually say a wigwam or a cave. What else? That's their only frame of reference. That's what I mean by there's no such thing as free choice. The choices are always within the realm of the environment that people are brought up in. Although I feel that I make free choices, I feel the same as everybody else, but I may not recall the influences of television, radio, motion pictures, role models. All of those affect your choice. There's no such thing as beauty. If your culture says that this is a beautiful girl, that's within the framework of your culture. If you're brought up on an island where people have pointed heads, that will be beautiful in your terms. All these mythological structures are what get us into trouble. It's the artificiality of our values that get us into trouble. Now, how do you find values that are relevant? By studying nature and how nature works. After all, a spider to another spider doesn't look ugly. An octopus to another octopus doesn't look ugly. They look like octopus. And they have relations with one another in whatever area they can. There's no such thing as beauty. That's your own concept. That's a concept that your environment impressed upon you. If you don't understand, if you go to another planet where everybody has 6 arms and a pointed head, that would be beautiful to them. Do you understand that? Beauty has nothing to do with anything. It's an abstract term that has really no meaning except people brought up in a given culture with a given set of values, meaning they do not have free will, free choice, but they select that which they see in motion pictures, television, radio, DVDs, all the role models presented to them. If you still do not understand the concept of free will, if you still have difficulty with that, go back in time, say 200 years ago, and ask a person, what would you like? They don't say, I'd like a cantilevered, braced aircraft. Because it didn't exist. They can't talk about it. They can only talk about the things relevant in their culture. If you still have difficulty, go back 1,000 years and ask people what they would like. They would never say a stainless steel wing braced with a main spar and ribs. They can't make those statements. The only thing that enables us to make statements a little beyond our receptors is invention, like the microscope. The microscope presents us with a world that we cannot see with the naked eyes. Polarizing materials show us stresses in membranes. We cannot see that with the naked eye. The telescope makes the craters of the moon clear so we can see them. So I would call all inventions attempts at extensional devices to extend the human attributes into areas that we cannot perceive with our own receptors. That's why you go to school. You go to school to learn that which other people have picked up and they present it to you. They give you more extensions in your way of thinking. People that don't know how to solve problems are not to blame for that. They are not brought up with solutions. In the early days it was normal for a father to spank his children with his belt. But that's because that's the only tools they had available. Jealousy might cause people to beat up one another or to get into fights. But when you learn the psychology of human behavior, you no longer want to beat them up. You understand that they have a different set of values than you have, and they don't have methods of solving problems. That's why we have schools, and that's why a lot of people write books, so you don't have to go through the same experiences they went through to learn. Books give us extensional experience by others that we have not experienced. Books are a wonderful way of preventing people from making the same mistakes over and over again. Unfortunately, people don't know what books to read. They read such books as Helen Trent's Troubles or romantic novels which don't give you any information at all. They don't even know what information is.
Do you think that the passional crimes will go away? Crimes of passion, do you think they'll go away?
They won't even occur in the future. It isn't that they go away. It's people that commit those crimes are brought up without appropriate information to handle problems. I hope you know what that means. If you find out that fish gather near the coral reefs and you tell that to other people, they will be able to catch more fish. If you don't share your knowledge with other people, they will remain ignorant in those areas. That's why people write books on how to find the North Star, how to find the Great Dipper. All that is information previously accumulated in their experience.
What about pets?
Those of you that like pets can have pets, but if they defecate on other people's lawns, they have to be conditioned not to do that. And so if you have 6 or 10 cats, as long as they defecate on your lawn, it's all right. But we don't want your hobbies and interests to interfere with other people. If you have traditions that exclude other people, you can practice those traditions on your own, but you can't force other people to accept your traditions. An elderly Jewish man once asked me if I will permit traditions. I said, will you? He says, of course I will. I said, the Ku Klux Klan's once a month for over 70 years. Is that all right with you? He says, no. Then how do you select which traditions? Those traditions that have long outlived their usefulness will be outgrown or bypassed. The nation that cannot make the appropriate adjustments for the future will be bypassed by nations that can.
Okay, the next question. Does Jacque see himself as someone that is just standing on the shoulders of giants? Do you see, Aman? Yeah. Do you see?
No, I do not see that continuously. I see that standing on the shoulders of giants may give me the tools to understand what happens in nature around me. But you have to be able to put those things together. If you can't put those things together, they can't be extensional to you. The ability to put things together in their appropriate relationships is specialized training.
The next question, I guess, relates to this. What does that mean, and how has it been misrepresented by people such as Peter Joseph?
Well, Peter Joseph really gave us information on the banking systems, the Federal Reserve, Confessions of Economic Hitman. He made a lot of things available to people that people don't know about. But he got that information from books. And he got the information from the Venus Project on the resource-based economy and how it works. This is not an invention of Peter Joseph. Peter Joseph points out the shortcomings of our culture, which is absolutely necessary. But he did not point out solutions. What do you do about it? This is an area that he required a great deal of information in before he can defend that system.
I'd just like to add, Jacque did read a lot of people's books and stood on other people's shoulders, but Jacque did the work throughout his lifetime to arrive at the conclusions that he did arrive at, which were new conclusions and contrary to the norms of society in just about every area. So he didn't just read people's books and put it together and come up with this. He did experimentation, he worked with people, he tested his learning theories, he backed it up technically, what the society would look like, spent many years of doing this, and I would say Peter did read his books and did a nice presentation on it, but he didn't do the work to back it up, or we also didn't feel that he could carry it out because of this. What about professionals in this system? Why the Venus Project way, not theirs? Let me see. Why is the Venus Project way not theirs? Do they need reorienting, or can they contribute as they are now in their own profession?
They can contribute in their own profession. But you got to remember that this system rewards scientists for being a chemist or a structural engineer. They get jobs. So they think within the realm of their education. Their education does not point out the shortcomings of society. No university that I know of points out the unworkable areas in our society. They do not deal with improving the design of cities. Although they make rooftop gardens, that does not improve cities. Although they educate people, the people are not generalists. They don't know what in their education is relevant and that which is less relevant. If a university did that, they would not be sponsored by the money system. If a university taught systems objectively, they would not be supported. Every system tries to get people to conform to support that system. That goes for communism, socialism, free enterprise, or any other civilization. If they don't demand loyalty, they can't keep their civilization together. So what they do is they teach things that would support an established system. We do not advocate an established system. The Venus Project talks of an emergent system in the state of change, so that we always prepare people for the next changes coming ahead, so that people will not cling to the past.
Also, as you always give in an example, is that the schools today have more money and appropriations and more technical ability, but they're turning out scientists that work and make weapons because they think it's a real kick to make weapons. So the government can use people.
It isn't so much the making of weapons, it's the challenges that they're given. They're not shown the other country's point of view. In other words, if our president were to criticize another country for 1 hour, we would invite the prime minister of the other country to give their point of view. We would give religion on Sunday and non-religion. We would present what different people believe all over the world, not any one or two different religions. This would be controlled information. And we don't believe in controlled information. We believe in presenting multiplicity of points of view so that people can say, I don't know enough about it to conclude. They have to study many different points of view in order to arrive at closer approximations of reality.
What are your views on politics, and do you think we can use it in any way to help implement the Venus Project?
There never has been a politician that gave us information such as how to prevent war, how to grow more food, how to do mass housing, how to apply transmission of high voltage with less losses, always done by scientists and technicians. Politics can offer nothing, but politics was great 100 years ago before we had the information. Today we have information as to what generates aberrant behavior, and we can now install that in the society and eliminate the conditions that produce undesirable behavior without the use of force.
There are a few people around the world who have gotten in touch with us and said that they're running as a politician to introduce the resource-based economy and the Venus Project.
Well, then they're not running as politicians. They're using politics as a method of informing people.
Which could be useful. Next question, how do you think we'll get the resources to build the first city?
You won't get the resources. First, you have to educate people into this way of thinking. And if they agree that it should be done, if some people or government sponsor the building the first city, we will get it built. If people just talk about it, nothing will happen. And unless they act to help support these goals, unless they work on drawings, blueprints, and methods, unless they put up the funds to build a new city, unless some government says, yes, I like the Venus Project, I'm going to build the first experimental city to test the validity of its methods of operation. This is the only way it will come about. It will not come about by a lot of people who say we like the Venus Project. If they do nothing to bring it about, it will not occur.
If you could get enough money to move from Florida to another country and get more land and more help on site from full-time volunteers, would you do it?
Yes.
In an instant?
Yes.
We were trying to sell this land at one time, but then the market kind of crashed and nobody's buying anything. If so, what's stopping you from doing this? Funding. If we can't sell this land, we don't have the funding to go someplace else and do that unless somebody puts up the funds, which we are talking to people about this. We're always trying to do that. How would you determine who comes and helps? Would it be people? Would it be people you know, or how would it work?
We have a list already of qualified people in different professions. We can select from that list at the time some country says, yes, let's build the first city, then we can select from the background of people the qualifications they have for doing what is necessary to build the experimental city.
And there's a lot to do. We need people who understand this direction too. And one of the things many of the things we'd like to do in the first experimental city is have groups of people who make books and media and lectures and introduce this to other people as well. So there'd be a lot going on there for all kinds of people. And a research center, and we'd like to do a theme park there as well, if we can, to bring people from the outside. You have thousands of inventions. Is there nothing you can do within this system to fund your aims and proposals using some of these inventions?
That's what we've been doing. Whatever money we've earned, we use to build the first Venus Project. We spent 30 years paying for it ourselves.
No, he's saying you have thousands of you have thousands of inventions. Can't you finance it with your inventions?
I'd rather finance the Venus Project and the information. I'm not too interested in inventions. That would be a commercial venture now.
Jacque started that way with inventions. If you looked at his resume, you've seen that he's done prefabricated houses. He did the first 3D film camera for motion pictures. He did the first jet ski. He did hundreds and hundreds of medical devices. And a lot of these practical things he did was just to support his research to do things that were even more far out that the understand at all, but things that he was interested in terms of just science and research. So just because you have a better product and you have inventions, it very often takes a lot of money to get it on the market. And if you do get it on the market, you have to have marketing people and more money to advertise and make dyes. And it's very hard. There must be not just Jacque, but thousands of inventors that have very good products that can't get it on the market just because of the restrictions of funding and patents and marketing. And people don't want interference, because if there's interference with another product that's similar to that product, they sometimes buy the product and put it on the shelf. There's just all sorts of problems. And it's not that easy if you have an invention just to put it out there and make a lot of money. So Jacque felt, because of all the problems he had going that route in the beginning, and even if you make a house with a garden rooftop, that doesn't solve the problems. It's not where he wants to spend his time. He realized over the years of trying to do products that it was the social design itself that was the cause of the problems, not just designing a house, a hip prosthesis, or even working. He worked with drug addicts, alcoholics, kids they called juvenile delinquents in the early days, and changed them. Even if he changed 500 of them, the system produced 5,000 of them. So he realized it was the social system itself that caused the problems, and this is what had to be introduced, and this is what he spends his time on. If somebody came along and said, okay, I want to back a research center to put out your products, and backed it financially, I'm sure Jacque would do that. This person says, you didn't answer my question. How would you select people that would come and volunteer full-time for you in a new self-sustainable site?
By technical competence.
And their eagerness to help. Would it be based on their contribution to the teams and projects, or how much they donate? How would that work?
By their technical competence. Before they suggest anything, I would prefer that they read the book, The Best That Money Can't Buy. Read the book twice, or as many times as you need to get the basic working characteristics of the Venus Project. Without reading that book, you will ask the same questions over and over again.
We would also need people who understand this direction and work toward it. But in terms of the beginning of developing the city, we would need people who were technical in doing that in the beginning. And as the city grows and we can take on people, we would want people who know about this system and can work towards it, because that's what the city would be devoted towards, or a more developed self-sustaining community.
A self-sustaining community would have to be throughout the world, not in any one location, except the first experimental city. But once that's built, and once people come and visit it, and they like it, they identify with it, then we would build it in every other country that wanted to build that. You cannot get an agreement from all countries. There would only be in the beginning a few countries that will join together, unite for the common good. That'll prove to be the best system, and eventually other countries will join with us. We cannot get the world to join with us right away due to the neural lag or lack of information in the new system. A lot of people will attack the system, especially people brought up to believe that the system they live under is the best system. You have to, rather than kill people, you have to wait till they're ready to undergo change. We went to the Arab world. We noticed that a lot of people had cell phones, and a lot of people had electric lights. So whether they reject it or accept it depends on how far into the future that society will evolve. If they don't accept electricity, if they don't accept new knowledge, as a system, it'll collapse. Those nations that have no vision of the future will be bypassed.
Could you explain in more detail what you mean by can't exceed environment and how that applies to what people learn in this system?
If you take any animal and domesticate it and feed it and turn it loose in a new environment, they have to make new adjustments. They cannot use what they've had in a zoo, in a cage, in which you put an animal in a cage and fed it every so many hours. That animal will have to learn how to adapt to the new environment. They cannot use the system that they were conditioned to. When a man has been in prison for 25 years, he cannot make the appropriate adjustments. The word which I've described many times, intelligence, has no meaning. An intelligent mechanical engineer of 75 years ago can't get a job today because the word has no meaning, only if he's kept up with ideas. If people don't keep up with new ideas, their intelligence doesn't grow. The more you're exposed to, the more magazines you read, the more articles you read on newer technology, the broader your frame of reference. That's what I mean.
Right, and information doesn't come down through the ether or isn't granted to you by some dead person a long time ago. Anything that you learn, how you speak, you pick up from the environment, your facial expressions, words you use to describe things, everything you get from your environment. That environment might mean a worldly environment if you travel or you read books from other countries, but you can't exceed what you've been exposed to in movies and books and TV and role models and teachers and your religion. That makes up what you call you.
You do not exist. You're a composite made up of all the books you read, the people you've known, the schools you've been to, the people you associate with. All of them influence your choice. You have no free choice. Your choice is made by customs. In other words, when women go in for fashion, the fashion has to coincide with the latest ideas in magazines on fashion. I would say that very few people will order an armored suit unless they're making a motion picture on earlier wars. The armor smith couldn't get a job today unless he worked for a movie studio.
This person's asking, is there a difference in the way you design cities and the way architects are taught in this system? If yes, what is it they're missing, and how can they learn to think like you do about a city design?
Well, most architects design things that they get a contract to design for. In other words, some people want a school building, a library, or a church, and the architects design that. But architects are not trained to design a whole city. They work on contract, and the contractor puts up those buildings. Architects in the future will be trained in social design, to design cities with art centers, music centers, cultural centers, safety, no cars in the streets. In other words, to be below the pedestrian level, so you don't have automobiles injuring people or hurting people.
And there's a big difference in designing in the monetary system, in the profit system for profit and business, and designing in a resource-based economy. This is something they don't even think about. So it's very different the way Jacque designs. And we are going to be working with architects and engineers who are interested in pursuing this direction. We're going to be working on more detailed blueprints of Jacque's. Probably in a couple months you can see the schedule on the new website. So Jacque will be teaching this directly as well. Is there a valid workforce at the Venus Project now? Well, there are 4 people, myself, Jacque, Joel, and Larry. Larry takes care of the grounds. He works every day, all day long. He's done a tremendous amount of work, and it looks fantastic. And Joel works with me in the office, edits. The next question is, the 21-acre in Florida a good place to start building something of any significance? Well, we put up 10 buildings here. We didn't have any outside funding to do that. We didn't take out any mortgages. So we have 10, they're small buildings because that's all we could afford at the time. And they're all work buildings. We are restricted here with zoning rules. We cannot put up another residence, nor at this time can we afford to. We couldn't take on anybody because we couldn't afford to feed them at this time. So we've always thought it would be fantastic to have more people helping. We could produce more videos, we could produce more books, we could do all sorts of things, but we're just restricted like other people financially. Is there some way to establish some kind of legal underground resource-based economy with just the people who identify with this direction? I guess he's talking about bartering. I don't know how you could do this otherwise.
No, I can't conceive of how that can be done unless it's global. I mean, if you don't want war, and if you don't want poverty or goodwill industries, or any deprivation of human beings, you have to establish this system all over the world and make the resources of the world available to all people. If we fail to do that, we will continue along the old lines over and over again.
How can we, the community, help establish such a community? Do you have any advice? I guess more of a, I guess you're talking about a community, a larger kind of research center somewhere else. We would need the funding for that. Perhaps we could do it through grants. I don't know. I can only say we're always approaching other people. People are talking to us about doing cities or communities. We have 2 groups of people now, so I don't know if anything will come out of it. But we're always working at it. We just need funding to establish something like that, and we have to purchase the land as well. So it's just beyond our means financially at this time.
I have a question for Jacque. What does information mean to you?
Information about the conditions on Mars cannot do anything for people that live on Earth. Information is something you can apply or learn to teach people to apply to better their lives. Information such as the nature of blueberries might be interesting to one that cultivates blueberries, but it isn't information to all people. So our major concern is how to make the world sustainable for all people without any technical elitism or any other kind of elitism.
How about asking competent people who understand and work in the banking system, such as Max Kieser? Are you talking about asking them for money? I'm not sure what you're asking. We do have our media group, who has a large list of people that we're trying to contact right now. So if you would like to add to that list or would like to help the media group reach out to other people and introduce the Venus Project, this would be wonderful if you have any suggestions. But we are always trying to do that. I have kind of found in the past it depends on who you know rather than what you know. So in all the years of trying to send out papers and things, it's been difficult making any significant contacts. But I think with more help that we have now and more people who are adamantly trying to do this, we might have more success in that.
Okay, I think that's it then. Thank you, Jacque and Roxanne, again for coming this week. It's been great and some good questions answered this time. Thanks everyone for coming. Hope you're all enjoying the new websites. If you haven't already registered at the Venus Project website, please do. That login that you register with will be able to be used at our tvpactivism.com website and also at the venus-expressions.com websites. You'll also need to log into the TVP Activism website if you're involved in that and apply to join your groups, as we've had to start from scratch, unfortunately, with the new server and the new websites which weren't compatible with the old website. So yeah, please go in and join your groups or sign up for your groups. If you're a coordinator, again, you need to go and sign up for your group, and I'll set you as admin for your group so you can then manage it from then on.
Thanks for showing up, everyone. We really appreciate it, and keep the questions coming. And
I just want to say this a little bit about free will. When you drive a car, you have to drive on the right side of the road in America and in England on the left side of the road. Nothing is left up to people. There are tests you take to test your ability to drive a car, to fly an airplane, to operate a computer, or to operate machinery. You go to school. There is no one that grasps the operation of anything without some kind of instruction. That's what I mean by no free will. You cannot approach an aircraft and service a turbojet engine if you have no experience in that area. If you've been an expert on sailboats, you can't work on a jet engine because you don't have the information necessary. That's what I mean by no free will. You have to be exposed to the methods of the discipline you enter. That's why they're called disciplines. When you study medicine, biology, chemistry, they are part of the disciplines, the scientific method. No one is born that way. There are people that think you can bring that out in people. It's hidden, but you can bring out the best in people. You can only bring out the best that they've been conditioned to.
we'll talk to you next week.